Good afternoon, all. Before we start this session, I request Dr. Krishna Dulal Baruwa to please come and take a seat here. And we start with Dr. Baruwa's presentation.
Actually, I am not doctor.
No, I'm sorry, I invite you to. We'll start today's session with Krishna Dulal Baruwa's presentation on translation, and we will be actually carrying forward whatever the significant points raised during the earlier session in many ways. One of the points of discussion was around the place of English in the translating scenario, and I think we will have presentations in this session which address this issue, because in my knowledge I think Sahitya is one example where he has translated directly from Marathi to Hindi, and he works with several Indian with non-English languages as well as Hindi. Right, so, and my paper will be dealing with the non-English domain of intra-Indian languages. So many questions raised during the first session will be extended in this, apart from new points being added. So I request Krishna Dulal.
Thank you. I wish everyone a very good afternoon. After a mesmerizing first session, now actually I am about to read out a paper which I prepared rather hurriedly, because Thomas sir made this sudden invitation and asked me to prepare it urgently. Anyway, Honorable Chairman of this session of the Symposium, Honorable dignitaries, respected participants, ladies and gentlemen, please accept my warm regards. It is indeed a proud privilege and honor for me to be a part of this great occasion amidst such a distinguished assemblage. I wholeheartedly thank the Sahitya Academy, the honorable members of the Academy's organizing committee, for this kind invitation. I'm sure that this experience will be immensely enlightening and inspiring to help me overcome my limitations to some extent for carrying on with my translation works. My special thanks to Dr. A.J. Thomas, with whom I have had the good fortune to be in touch for over 2 decades, from those days when he was the assistant editor of the Indian literature. I also take this opportunity to pay my homage to the patron saint of translators, Saint Jerome, on whose death anniversary today we have gathered to show solidarity of the Worldwide Translation Committee in our bid to bridge cultures and connect nations. Translation, a bridge between two cultures. Culture encompassing thoughts, beliefs, values, customs, fine art, social consciousness, and language, among others, is a trans-historical component of civilization that enriches and enlivens the distinctive identity of different linguistic groups of people. Apart from its significant contribution towards mankind's refinement and reformation, culture instills into the hearts and minds of people a strong sense of self-esteem and pride, along with the spirit of resistance against transculturation. Culture is deeply embedded in the language. In fact, language is the means by which culture and tradition is conveyed and preserved. Language and culture, both intricately interwoven, develop together and influence each other as they evolve. The acquaintance with other cultures acts as a stimulant that opens up new horizons and impels us to think in new ways, whereby our own culture can be enriched with an added dimension. Thus, acquaintance and enrichment are rendered possible through the medium of words, the variety of vocabulary, and language replete with the elements of culture. Culture acts as a vibrant background to literature. Translators and interpreters play the important role of bridging cultures, thereby enabling people from different cultural backgrounds understand each other better. Translation as a bridge fosters cultural equality. The rapid growth and development of the modern European languages from the 13th century onwards was a result of translations to these languages from Latin, which had been enriched between the 1st and the 13th centuries by its superb renderings of Greek literature. The Japanese translation of a Dutch book on anatomy in 1774 is said to have contributed immensely towards the birth of a new Japan. Empress Catherine of Russia, who was a German by birth and who ascended the throne after the assassination of her husband, Peter III, made government investments in translations to quicken the pace of Russia's modernization in the 18th century. During the last 2 centuries, Indian literature grew into maturity, much from translations and adaptations of English literature. In a multi-ethnic, multilingual, and multicultural social setup, as in India, translation has a very significant role to play. For initiating better understanding among cultures, it is the most powerful tool. Apart from enabling people acquire ideas of the varied works of other regional literature by unveiling the wealth and diversity of their resources, it can contribute significantly to national integration. Differences of divisions in multilingual societies can be bridged in a worthwhile manner by translations from one language and culture to another, bringing different segments of humanity closer to one another. Hindi and English have continued to serve as the main languages of literary exchange for their indirect translations. Had these linked languages not been in use, texts from many languages would never have got translated at all. The Sahitya Akademi has been working commendably in this field by promoting translations of regional literature and bringing out a wide array of publications through which the bridging of cultures has been facilitated simultaneously. The preparation of comprehensive bilingual dictionaries and a pan-India vocabulary have become primary requirements that the esteemed organization can venture upon. A sizable percentage of the vocabulary of modern Indian languages is Sanskritic in origin. When the source language and the target languages are closely related, as for example, Sanskrit, Hindi, Assamese, Bangla, to name a few, the problems in translation are comparatively less intense. But translation to or from a foreign language, or even a language within the country, with unfamiliar expressions and features pose stiff challenges. When the text centers around traditional backgrounds with folk and ethnic elements in abundance, the complexities in rendition soar at times to unmanageable proportions. Herein lies the urgent need of a pan-Indian dictionary. In subsequent phases, select words from such an arrangement could go on to be accepted in the global circuit through the Oxford or other trusted dictionaries, as in the case of Indian words like avatar, ayo, bazar, banglo, etc. The attainment of universality by our original words surely are occasions of no mean significance, and this is rendered possible most effectively by translation. Due to the unavailability of the aforesaid resource materials in Assamese, actually we call ourselves Ohomia. At best it should be Osomia, but actually the word Assamese has been most commonly used now. Now, even common words like gamusa, pirali, hapona, sador, agloti kolapat, for instance, have been getting compromised with words or terms like Assamese towel, plint, altar, breastcloth, tip of a banana leaf, as English equivalents, where besides the inaccuracy or incompleteness in meanings, the cultural contexts associated with them get alienated. The gamusa is not simply a towel. It is a symbol of honor used even in the altars of prayer houses, apart from honoring guests, respected people, and achievers. Male bihu performers tie it across their foreheads. The front portion of a fresh-grown banana leaf is an indispensable item in Assamese society during rituals. The Namghar tradition in Assam, initiated by Srimanta Hongkordeva in the 15th century, is both a prayer house and congregational hall, unlike common places of worship. Footnoting, no doubt, is a much better option than going for vague cultural parallels, but the frequent use of footnotes tends to ruffle the reader's concentration and mar the level of reading pleasure. Of course, at times, a metaphoric or idiomatic expression in the target text could be more convincing and equivalent than a forced interpretation of the source text. Translation endeavors bring to the fore numerous limitations and inadequacies in the English vocabulary too. For example, there is no reverential version of the word you while addressing in English to differentiate between a senior or respectable person from a youngster, as prevalent in most Indian societies or cultures. English cannot distinguish between the different types of uncles, aunts, in-laws, elder and younger brothers and sisters. While translating one of Nilmani Fukon's poems, I came across a situation of extreme helplessness. In the poem, the funeral pyre's flames do not get extinguished. The pyre keeps on burning. The situation demands the term inextinguishing pyre to express the continuity of the fire burning in the pyre. But pitifully, owing to the inexistence of the word inextinguishing in English, I had to settle for the term inextinguished pyre in utter helplessness and unease. In the green frontiers, a gong breaks into a clangor. It is evening now over the inextinguished fire. The inexistence of a word in the target language led to an unsolicited state of inaccuracy in the translation. A bridge there was, but with a rift. A translator needs to grow with his experience and find answers on his own along the journey. Varieties of experiences open the doors of our perception and broaden the expanse of our horizon. The judicious choice of strategies is simultaneously promoted. Translation, after all, as Ernst Stranz said, is neither a creative nor an imitative art, but stands somewhere between the two. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhavan. I think we can now have
Good afternoon to all present here, some of whom I have been blessed to have as my teachers. Greetings to this session chair, Professor Sachin Ketkar, a dear friend and colleague. I begin by thanking Dr. Srinivas Rao, Secretary Sahitya Academy, and Dr. A.J. Thomas, valued friend and mentor in several ways, for inviting me here to share my views on this extremely stimulating topic. Some of you may already know, but it is essential that I begin by talking a bit about my own personal history. I come from a multilingual background. My father is from Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, who learned Tamil and Sanskrit out of passion. Work brought him to Delhi and he has lived in the city for close to 60 years. My mother hails from Amritsar, Punjab, but finished her schooling in higher education in Delhi, where she teaches Hindustani classical music at the Delhi University College. Given the usual trials of a nuclear family, I was admitted to a Tamil medium school because the neighbors' children studied there, and I was while English remained the de facto language at home. My earliest memories of translation and interpreting are therefore from a fairly young age, maybe from class 5, when I helped my mother piece together my father's Tamil and Malayalam conversations and messages with friends and family. So my parents agree it was undoubtedly at a very young age that I developed a flair for languages. And I went on to study 4 languages in school: Hindi, English, Tamil and Sanskrit. In 2013, I co-authored a beginner's handbook on translation meant for first-year students of Delhi University studying the applied language course. This was my first formal brush with translation theory. I am currently pursuing my PhD under the guidance of noted translator and academic Professor Mohammad Asaduddin from Jamia Millia Islamia on the short fictions of 2 writers from Urdu and Tamil literary traditions respectively. I am a bilingual poet writing in both Hindi and English and an avid translator and a frequent reviewer of books written in English, Hindi and in translation. During the course of my PhD, I was involved in a project of translating some of Premchand's short stories from Hindi, Urdu to English. I have translated poetry from English to Hindi and vice versa. This is roughly the position from which I shall humbly submit before you my impressions. Translation has easily been one of the most significant tools in transmission of world literature beyond borders. People of all linguistic communities have benefited from translations of not only religious texts, but also which were possibly produced as a result of earliest tasks of translation, but also from scientific, technical as well as literary leaps made by humankind over times immemorial. In an increasingly globalized world, plurilingual and pluricultural experiences necessitate translation in order to facilitate and encourage better understanding as well as communication between people. While translation practice brings people closer on a day-to-day basis, transcending languages, cultures, distances and time across the globe, it is only now that some significant attention is being accorded to the unique feat achieved by translation when it goes beyond the more basic function of conveying meaning in another vehicle or language to acting as a bridge between the source and the target cultures. However, how far translation practice is able to succeed in and reflect the bridging of cultures is tricky business at best, for it demands a far greater competence on the part of the translator, superseding the bare knowledge of the 2 languages to an in-depth knowledge of 2 usually dissimilar cultures. In the case of literature from South Asia, the complexities involved in translation grow manifold, and while zooming in to the dialects ridden with the multifarious layers of caste and class specific to rural India, the task of the translator can be best described as baffling to the core, who may be torn between retaining the acutely varied nuances in the source text and conveying them justifiably into a Western tongue. My area of interest and research is Indian literature and translation, hence too the case studies I will bring forth. Keeping the above mentioned concerns at heart, this paper is divided into 3 broad sections. The first section will undertake a brief analysis of different translations of 2 short stories of trailblazing woman writer Isma Chugtai to indicate the complexities of translation. The second section will draw upon my own experiences as a translator of Premchand's short stories. The third section will venture into the product of a translation from another translation, my Hindi translation of a contemporary Tamil poet S. Revati, who writes under the pen name Kuti Revati, from a previous English translation. Through these select case studies, the paper seeks to analyze and evaluate the complexities inherent in the process of translating culture and exploring how culture appears in translation, in fiction and poetry. Section 1. In a book titled Translation as Communication Across Cultures, translation studies scholar Julian House, in the first 3 chapters, moves from the nature of and different approaches to translation, outlines a few new trends in TS like Indology, ethics, political action, etc., and eco-translatology, and in the 4th eponymous chapter sets about defining culture into 2 basic and broad views, which are most useful to my present concerns. She talks about the humanistic concept of culture, which captures the cultural heritage, quote unquote, as a model of refinement an exclusive collection of a community's masterpieces in literature, fine arts, music, etc. While the anthropological concept of culture refers to the overall way of life of a community or society, that is, all those explicit or implicit designs for living which act as potential